Now, the Republicans seem to be having a hard time getting anything done. Take healthcare, for example, right? They can't seem to agree on what should be in their Obamacare replacement plan. You have the far right versus the slightly less right-wing factions arguing how much or how little they want to screw over the poor. Now, this is potentially good for the Democrats, right? Because if Trump care fails, that's going to actually make it harder for Republicans to do other things. For example, tax reform. Now, we know tax reform is just code word for cutting taxes for the rich and corporations. Now, in fact, Republicans have actually started to signal that they're working on this tax reform. Now, have no fear, right? The Democrats will obviously never side with Paul Ryan or Donald Trump to try to cut taxes for the rich, right? Well, some of them are. Now, look, to be fair, these aren't most of the Democrats. They actually belong to a small, fairly small wing of the Democratic Party called the Blue Dogs. Now, who the hell are the Blue Dog Democrats? Well, you might not hear much about them because they're essentially dying. Seems like they can't seem to win elections anymore. There are about 18 of them, right? Now, these are your right-wing conservative Democrats. Now, again, they're fairly small because they can't seem to win because nobody's interested in conservative Democrats. Republicans won't vote for them because, well, they just vote for a Republican. Imagine that. And liberals and progressives won't vote for them because they're essentially right-wingers. So that's why they continue to lose elections, but they're still there. And they're actually pairing up now with Trump aides to try to help pass lower taxes for the wealthy and corporations. Now, the Hill explains, just 18 members strong, the centrist Blue Dogs, I added that emphasis there, compose a tiny voice within the House, vastly outnumbered by even the liberals in their own caucus. But with GOP leaders struggling to rally their divided conference around big-ticket legislation, the Blue Dogs see themselves potentially stepping into the mix to broker a bipartisan deal for the sake of getting tax reform to Trump's desk this year. In fact, last week, they wrote to tax reform stakeholders on K Street. K Street is, of course, just means lobbyists, urging those groups to oppose a strictly partisan approach to this year's tax debate. Meaning they wrote these lobbyists and were like, hey, man, you know what we want to do? We actually want to help the Republicans pass giant corporate tax cuts. So why don't you, since you guys own the Republicans, tell them to do a bipartisan deal with us? Wonderful, right? Now, Dan Lipinski, one of the Blue Dog chairmen, wrote in this letter, quote, reforming our tax system must be done in the most responsible and sustainable way. And that means it must be bipartisan. Now, I'm going to get to why it's so important for it to be bipartisan later. But essentially, these Democrats, so-called Democrats, which are really just Republicans, saying, hey, are you guys having a problem getting your tax reform passed? Well, don't worry. We're just as conservative as you on taxes, and we can't wait to cut taxes for rich people. Let's work together. Let's do some bipartisan tax reform. Now, the Blue Dogs, according to The Hill, met Tuesday evening with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, White House Chief Economic Advisor Gary Cohn, and Mark Short, the president's Director of Legislative Affairs, to press a simple two-pronged message. First, they want tax reform to be sustainable, and it must be bipartisan. And second, the Blue Dogs, we're here to help. Now, remember that word. Remember bipartisan. We'll get back to that, as like I said. Now, Sanford Bishop, representative from Georgia, said, if it's constructive, if they're generally interested in ideas and making it a bipartisan effort, then the Blue Dogs are certainly willing to participate. Constructive, of course, meaning, hey, if it makes our donors happy, then it's super constructive, right? Now, I want you to look at how the Blue Dogs frame themselves, because this is amazing. Bishop continues, he says, you've got the far left, you've got the far right, and the Blue Dogs are in the center. They're in the center. We want a tax code that's efficient, that works for everybody. So to them, I love how they took the mantle of, oh, we're the centrist ones. Well, you know what that means. Center meaning pro-corporation, because it's exactly what you are. We're the centrists, though. We're the ones that make sense. I mean, look at the far left with their crazy ideas about taxing rich people to pay for things like the country needs. No. We don't want the rich corporations to pay for those things. No. We want the middle class to pay for those things. That's why we want to cut taxes for the rich. That's why we want to shrink government. Because we're not actually Democrats. We're not actually liberal. We're actually conservatives. And we've got everybody tricked into thinking that we're Democrats. Isn't that a great trick? Isn't that great? We can't wait to work with you to cut taxes. You might as well become a Republican, guys. Nobody is seeing through your little trick, okay? Everybody knows you from what you are. But there is several reasons, actually, why they haven't changed over to being Republicans. Now, Bishop continues. They're interested in input because they recognize that it needs to be a bipartisan effort if it's going to succeed. And they want it to succeed. Well, why is it so important to be so bipartisan? I mean, look, Republicans right now could push through a tax package without any Democratic votes. They could do it on a simple majority using reconciliation. Now, the article even notes that the GOP leaders in both chambers are actually hoping to rally other Republicans to support pushing through a package without any Democratic support through Congress, okay? So, using this reconciliation. Now, all they would need to do that is a simple majority, 50 votes. Now, they would have to wrangle some of the moderates, but of course, a lot of the moderate, so-called moderate Republicans are people that want tax cuts just as much as anybody else. So actually, that would be more easy, more simple than going and trying to do healthcare, which I'm surprised they didn't actually do first. But now the Blue Dogs, they're like, no, don't go through reconciliation. No. We want to help you. We desperately want to help you pass these tax cuts. Now, that's super weird, right? Something that the Republicans can do on their own. The Democrats can't wait to jump in and try to help these Blue Dogs, right? Now, they said if healthcare reform passes on a party line vote via reconciliation, which is what they're trying to do, there will be likely less appetite for Republicans to reach across the aisle for Democratic votes on tax reform. Now, if anything, one senior aide close to the Blue Dog Democrats said, it's going to create an incentive for them to continue doing things in the way that they have done. If, on the other hand, the Republicans' health care bill fails to reach Trump's desk, GOP leaders may feel increasing pressure to score a legislative victory on a major issue, and they'll face a heightened urgency to get tax reform across the finish line, even if that means compromising with these corporate Democrats to get it done. Quote, if healthcare goes down, there aren't a lot of places that I can see the Trump administration doesn't turn on congressional Republicans for not helping healthcare passed. And they're going to want a big win, said a second advisor aide aligned with the Blue Dog Democrats. Now, that second scenario is where Blue Dogs think that they could step in and work with the Republicans to do these sweeping tax reforms. So what they want to do is that they want to come in, they want to see healthcare fail so that they could come in and say, you need us. You need us. We're Democrats. We're more than willing to cut taxes for the rich. We love cutting taxes for the rich. Come on, work with us. We desperately want to do something bipartisan to help you out. And look, they think that that's a winning strategy too, by the way. That's crazy. Now, the other thing is that if they pass this through reconciliation, the Republicans go it alone, well, it only lasts for 10 years. And then they got to go back and actually pass it again. Well, who knows what's going to happen in 10 years? There might be a huge progressive wave that says, no, we're not going to cut taxes for the rich. We're actually going to raise taxes on the rich. And screw that, right? Well, so this is what they want. They don't want reconciliation. They want a permanent tax increase. The Hill explains. Blue Dogs stressed to Mnuchin and Cohn that they want the package to be deficit neutral, of course. Now, since adding to the deficit under reconciliation rules would cause these new tax cuts to expire after a decade. So they want a tax cut that doesn't expire. Well, that's what they mean. That's what they mean by bipartisan. That's what they mean by sustainable as well. They want to sustain these tax cuts in perpetuity. So the Blue Dogs, who are essentially Democrats in name only, are trying to work with Trump aides to try and cut taxes for the rich permanently. Not like some part of a deal where you would think that, okay, look, we'll help you pass these tax cuts, but you got to give us something in return. Like maybe more funding for social safety nets. I don't know how you do that. Or maybe a promise to not repeal healthcare or Obamacare. No, they're saying that we love corporations too, so much so that let's work together, screw over the rest of our party. We don't really care about the Democratic Party. We hate progressives. All we want to do is conservative legislation, so we're going to work with you. Now, you might be saying, hey, Jeff, look, they're a minority in the Democratic Party. They only have about 18 members. That has continuously shrunk because, again, they can't seem to win elections because people would rather vote for Republican than Republican light. What do they matter? What is this whole thing about? Why is it so important? Well, here's why. Here's a good reason. They give political cover to the Republicans. See, if they pass these tax cuts, the Republicans, if they do this in a bipartisan manner, they say, hey, man, we did this bipartisan. The Democrats also wanted it. They actually think our ideas are great. They think our ideas are normal. They think cutting taxes for the rich is an excellent idea to grow the economy. Basically, they're ceding the ideas. They're ceding ground in the war of ideas, in the war of ideology. They're saying that Republican arguments on the economy are perfect. They work just great. Progressive ideas, no, they don't work at all. No, if you want to do anything sensible and bipartisan, well, that just means cutting taxes for the rich. That is the accepted orthodoxy. Okay. Now we know that is deeply incorrect. All you have to do is just look at Kansas. Kansas is an excellent case study on what happens when you cut taxes to the bone for corporations. It turns out that it created a lot less jobs. They had incredibly stagnant economic growth. They ran giant deficits. They had to cut education, on and on and on. So it's an excellent case study of what happens when conservative economics are actually implemented. Well, the Blue Dog Democrats, they don't care. They think that that's right. They think that that's perfectly fine. Hey, let's cut taxes. Maybe not as much as Kansas, but cutting taxes is an ideology that we can get behind. And that's what they're doing. Okay. Here comes the Blue Dog Democrats giving these ideas credence and giving Republicans aid and comfort when they're here trying to screw you to benefit them and their rich donors. And this is why the Blue Dog Democrats, these corporate Democrats, suck. That's why they need to be replaced. That's why they got to go. They don't have any business being an actual Democrat. They're not even close to being liberal. So why are they Democrats? All they do is lose elections and they help the right wing. You want to help Republicans? Well, why not just become a Republican? You're essentially one right now, but again, for the reasons that I outlined earlier, that's why they're playing this cute little trick there, where they're trying to trick people into thinking, no, we're Democrats. What are you talking about? We're just sensible centrist Democrats. No, there's nothing sensible about your position. You're a right winger, and you vote for right wing ideas. Just be honest. Just own it. You're Republicans. Just fucking own it. Okay? That's why they're suck. No, look, it's time to take the party back from these guys. Okay? These corporate Democrats who only serve their donors. They do not belong in the party of FDR. They just don't. Every single one of them needs to be primaried and primaried hard. Okay? Not just so that we can replace them with, slightly more liberal, Democrats. No. We need progressives. We replace them with progressives, and then once we're done with that, we can go and crush Republicans. You know why? Because our ideas actually work. Their ideas don't work. We need to show them that we're actually right on policy by winning and implementing progressive policy. Okay? So let's get rid of the party of these embarrassments, so we can actually start to win on our policies and actually do better for the American people. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.